Hello again, folks. This time, I'd like to actually talk instead of meander about my rotation in this Skitzo rant, in this little heart-to-heart I'm going to have with you on this lovely day. So, I like to do recaps every 50 Skitzo rants or so, give or take, about a topic that I think is pretty universally interesting and also universally true. And at least it's my own version of thoughts that I've been putting forward that, are a certain set of values which, are applicable across the board no matter where you apply them. And those are what I'm calling universal truths. For instance, any type of murder is wrong. It's wrong to kill an animal and eat it, just, factual. It's wrong to kill an unborn human baby just for convenience. Any type of murder is simply wrong, and the world would be better, the less of that exists. Now, self-defense happens. That's different from murder. If you want to get into the weeds about that, that's a little bit cringe. But, nowhere in the world is self-defense considered the same thing as an act of aggression. Like, there's a non-aggression principle for a reason. Don't try and link the two together. Universally, violence that is not provoked is factually incorrect. And especially violence that we could do without. Like, we as a species could survive without eating meat, obviously. We as a species could survive without killing our youth. Most of the times a mother can survive a pregnancy without the child hurting her, in which case if it, is actually going to end her life, then it does make sense, but that's pretty much the only circumstance where it really doesn't. It doesn't matter if you can't afford having a youth, etc. And that's just another universal truth, etc. And at least in my experience, these principles hold up. No matter what. Another universal truth of mine is free speech absolutism, that there is nothing that can come out of your mouth that should be in any way, shape, or form something that's wrong. Period. Like, even direct, credible death threats, until you actually take an action, it's a thought crime in that essence. And all thought crime should be, completely legal no matter the circumstances, always and without a doubt. And so again, those are universal truths and the things I would like to talk about. And today I would like to talk about the universal truth of Judaism, or one that I'm adding on here, which, Now, a lot of people will go, it's the Jews, and they're not wrong. They are not wrong. And I'll explain later in a little bit. And I'm a tiny hat person. I'm half Jewish on my father's side. Unfortunate, but a reality. I'm a mixed race little Amerigolem zombie baby cringe. It's inevitable. It's probably, both a reason for a lot of my success in life and also a reason for a lot of my troubles. As far as aesthetics goes, like being a mixed race, I've gone into how being a mixed race child, like between Jew and white, has, impacted my life or made things more interesting than they really needed to be. And it's, that severe lack of identity which goes, against the grain. But now we'll talk about the universal truth of the Jews. So, I'm not a fan of anti-Semitism in all of its forms, be it left-wing like in fascism or left-wing like in, communism. For instance, Karl Marx wrote The Jewish Question, which was basically the precursor to Mein Kampf, and, all of those left-wing ideologies. I consider fascism left-wing, You can whine about that all you want, but any system where people are voting or, has any sort of huge government is automatically left-wing to me. But I'm a far-right extremist. Like, Nazis are considered left-wing to where my political views are. At the end of the day, though, there are realities about Jews. And the real universal truth about Judaism is nepotism. So I'm a Nepo baby. I've benefited significantly from nepotism and just my biblical family name in the context. And at the end of the day, that does apply. The reason, for instance, a lot of people will complain about white privilege and how overrepresented white people are in media and society. And if you look at the graph of positions of power, white people are overrepresented by around 20% as far as the population goes. So let's say if I had 100 CEOs picked at random, right? Even though we'll pretend that's the entire amount of CEOs in the world, but I have 100 of them. And, whites make up, let's say, 15% of the population, right? So you should expect them to be 15 CEOs, not 20, which is what the reality of the situation is. Now, Jewish people in positions of power are overrepresented by well over 4,000%. The explanation for that is, of course, nepotism, and it's one race helps out its own. Jews look after the Jews. That's how they've survived the past 2 million years, 2,000 years, 2 billion years since, the reptiles created them and they traveled across the stars to infect this planet, however you want to go about it. The reality is that Jewish people are extremely, extremely into nepotism, that if you are a Jew, you have options and available avenues to go down that Goyim don't have, just flat out. And as a Jew, I can tell you that. Now, some people will extrapolate that into a worldwide Jewish conspiracy, which really doesn't exist. It's a number of small Nepo baby type shenanigans that any sort of really close, racist race like Jews are would have. And it's nothing to be expected. It's nothing all that special. It's literally, and here's how nepotism works. You only need one high-ranking Jew in a position of power, and that high-ranking Jew will appoint other Jews, and soon over time, in any given system, when you have that sort of a nepotistic, preferential treatment, it's going to eventually devolve into where the race that's doing it is going to, assume control over it. And they're going to be able to continue the nepotism, and then sooner or later they're all Jews. And that happens in systems organically when you consider how nepotistic Jews actually are. Now, what you have to ask yourself is not why are the Jews so nepotistic, it's why are white people, why are black people, why are Asians not as nepotistic as Jews? Why in the world do the other races not look after their own? And that's a question and a half. And you can cry about Jewish, Bolshevik propaganda if you want. You can take the Hitler approach to it. But I would argue the answer is a lot more simple, and it has to do with this concept of chutzpah. Now, chutzpah is being absolutely shameless in a way that the other races probably don't understand. So when a Jew says someone has chutzpah, what they're saying is he is absolutely shameless and willing to do anything to accomplish his goals. That's actually what that word means, and I don't know if there's a translation in English. I haven't ever heard a word like that. And so, that sort of cutthroat, ruthless, shameless sort of ideology is what drives Judaism. It's, basically the religion of Judaism is chutzpah, when you get right down to it. I'm not going to go into all the different passages and how to orchestrate it or organize it, because that would be a several hour-long video, and I doubt anyone cares that much. You're just going to have to accept or reject what I'm saying at face value because of that. So, the real reason why the Jews overrepresent themselves by 4,000% while whites only do 20% is not merit-based either. It's simply because, for instance, if you say, I want more white people in X, Y, and Z position, well, then you're considered a racist. And if you say, I want more black people in X, Y, and Z position, then you have to find qualified black candidates for that position, and then also get them in there through, the nepotistic Jewish system, which is very difficult when Jews overrepresent themselves by that much and control virtually all positions of power, which when you break it down, Jews basically do control all positions of power. And at the end of the day, they're not looking after African Americans. They're not looking after Chinese people. They're looking after the Jews, which is what every race should do. This isn't a slight against the Jews when you call them nepotistic either. This is what every race should be doing, and every race should be looking after its own people and trying to institute, Jewish superiority, white superiority, black superiority in institutions that they control. Why the other races don't do it is still a mystery to me, because it's not logical to not do it. And, we have this anti-racist culture, and a lot of this was assumed just to be normal back, 100 years ago, back when people had some sense. And so, the universal truth about the Jews is that there is no worldwide conspiracy. It's just their religion tells them to be nepotistic, and they act in a way that's in accordance with their values. And that's simply it. And the media Jews produce is no more degenerate than the media Caucasians produce, no more degenerate than the media Asians produce, And just because it's Jewish control doesn't somehow, just look at Japan, China, all of these places produce their own forms of degeneracy. And they're all unique. And even, some place that doesn't have a lot of Jewish influence, like Glorious Nihon, which is another nepotistic nation, which is why their products are superior. At least a large part of it is because of their nepotism. It's just that simple. I just don't understand why other people in other races aren't interested in pursuing things like the Jews do. And yeah, you can cry about all of this, but at the same time, even Marx knew that the Jews were the only real threat to a communist, to a communist takeover. That's why he rallied against them in the Jewish question, and what a lot of he said in that book would get him hanged today as being an anti-Semite. Like, him and Hitler would have gotten along great, I think. But it is what it is, and the whole white nationalist conspiracy or whatever is just what these people basically see is, they see a race that's looking after their own, and the white nationalists are just jealous that the Jews get to do it and they don't. That's their primary complaint. They want to enact violence on the people out of, the white nationalists are actually probably quite jealous of the Jews. Just because they get to, do the things the white nationalists would like to do, have an ethno-state, build a wall, all of that. For those of you who don't know, there is a wall surrounding Israel to keep out immigrants, and it works great. It's a big, beautiful wall, too. So, I think I've made my point on that, though, and I hope at least people can, start thinking about the situation differently in their own race and their own interactions with their race differently. And the same thing, and this isn't like a classist struggle, this isn't like a gender-related struggle, or the things that people are dividing themselves amongst these days. This is the same struggle that has always been the struggle, which will always continue to be the struggle of the world, is the struggle between the races and the power between the races. And, those who move the levers of power at the end of the day are going to control things, and if, it's going to be the Jews, so be it. I've benefited from this nepotism personally in my life at least twice, as far as job opportunities and a number of other things. It allowed me, I easily would have had to been working another 5 years to retire, as opposed to right now. I would still probably have to be pushing papers somewhere if I really wanted to. I would still be cancelable. So, I've clearly benefited from it, and, the real question you should ask yourself is, why has my race not done this? Why will my race not allow me to benefit from it? Why will, my brothers in arms not work together to keep us together? Why, for instance, if I'm a white person, am I willing to elect a black person that says he wants to end all white people? Or why is critical race theory attempting to be taught in my schools that teaches me that the color of my skin, Caucasian, is somehow inherently evil and oppressive and that it shouldn't exist? Maybe ask yourself those questions before you say, why is Shlomo Sheckelstein so rich? When the reality is, it's pretty obvious why he is and why you're not. Just look at your schools. That's all I have to say on the matter, though. You have a good day.